News just coming in. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval has met the Chinese President Xi Jinping during the BRICS NSA's meet with the Chinese President. There you see images of the Chinese President Xi Jinping and National Security Advisors of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. All the BRICS nations with the Chinese President. Earlier, Ajit Doval had met his Chinese counterpart on boundary talks, State Councillor Yang Jiechi. The meeting comes in the backdrop of the tense standoff between India and China at the Tri-Junction area. India Today's Anant Krishnan is in Beijing. He gets us this report.
The National Security Advisor Ajit Doval on Friday had a meeting with China's President Xi Jinping along with the other NSAs of the BRICS countries. This after the NSA had held key talks with his counterpart Yang Jiechi in Beijing on Thursday. But will Doval's visit help end the Doklam standoff? The sense is that perhaps too much to expect that Doval's talks with Yang would resolve what has become a very intractable standoff involving China and India in the Doklam Tri-Junction. But at the same time, the fact that China acknowledged a bilateral meeting is perhaps being seen as a sign it may yet just help ease tensions. But at the same time, the Chinese media has kept up its very hard and shrill rhetoric with India, with the leading PLA strategic expert on Friday, even in the middle of Doval's visit, making a very strong comment saying that India's intervention had opened the door for China to be involved in Jammu and Kashmir. Reporting for India Today in Beijing, this is Anant Krishnan.
India Today's Anant Krishnan now joins me live from Beijing. Also with us is our Foreign Affairs Editor Geeta Mohan. Anant, the bilateral between Yang Jiechi and Ajit Doval. Tell us more, considering they're both the interlocutors on boundary talks and there is a tense standoff at Doklam.
That's right, Gaurav. Both the Indian officials here in Beijing and the Chinese officials have been very tight-lipped about this meeting. And all that's emerged is that it's significant in of itself that it took place, given that there were murmurs, it was not going to happen. And more than that, the fact that it's been covered in the Chinese press. Even after all this rhetoric we've been reporting these past few weeks, the Chinese state media have acknowledged that they met, they discussed bilateral issues, regional issues, and in their words, Yang also held forth on major problems. They didn't say what these major problems are, but the fact that they mentioned it is quite interesting. It remains to be seen, Gaurav, what this means in the sense that the Chinese Foreign Ministry has certainly toned down the rhetoric. This whole week, we've had hardly anything from the Chinese Foreign Ministry for the first time since the standoff began on June 16th. The Chinese press is another beast. They've been keeping up the very shrill rhetoric, including this morning, as we reported, with the PLA expert writing a column threatening intervention in J&K. But the sense among Chinese officials is that perhaps aimed at the domestic sentiment in Beijing and trying to sort of show to the Chinese public that the Chinese government was doing something about it. But at the very same time, it seems the government appears to be toning things down a little bit.
Okay, so the Chinese government is toning things down, or at least appears to be toning things down for now when Ajit Doval is in Beijing. What about the Chinese media, the Global Times and the others?
Well, that's right, Gaurav. It seems to be speaking in two voices in some sense. And a leading expert that I spoke to said, in his view, it's partly aimed at the domestic constituency, especially those in the army have been very hawkish of late. As you recall, it was the PLA spokesperson himself who referred to the historical lessons of 1962 for the first time. And that's also because the PLA is on August 1st, just next week, celebrating its 90th anniversary. Xi Jinping is going to be supervising the largest ever war games of the PLA in Inner Mongolia. And so the army certainly is muscle flexing. And it's very also a first and quite unprecedented that the PLA spokesperson is linking the 90th anniversary to the Doklam standoff explicitly, saying that the PLA's 9th-year history.
Okay, stay with me, Anand. Geeta, any word from the External Affairs Ministry on the Yang Jiechi Ajit Doval talks?
Well, no word yet. When we asked questions, they said we will have to wait for a response from China, as also in terms of what the meeting and what the meeting was really all about would be spelled out a little later. But the fact is, Gaurav, that despite what we want to call it, it is a diplomatic win. The precondition was withdrawal of troops. That did not really happen in Gaurav. And despite that, we see that the meeting took place, which means that while the meeting has taken place, we do not really know if it means and whether it will end up de-escalating tensions, but it certainly means that China and India both got an opportunity to speak to each other face to face and put one's views forward.
So they've spoken, they've put their points of view forward. Anant, in the press release that the Chinese issued, they spoke of a big problem was also discussed. But any word filtering out about what the Chinese said and what the Indian response was, even through sources?
Well, Gaurav, it seems to be that the Chinese side is not going to acknowledge what was discussed, only because they've taken, as we've been reporting, such a strong public posture, saying that there's no scope for any kind of dialogue until and unless India withdraws. But our sense here is it's most unlikely that all issues on the table were not taken up. But the fact remains that given the optics in China and the fact they've been whipping up such nationalist sentiment here, Beijing is highly unlikely to acknowledge the fact that the standoff and boundary issues may have been discussed by the two yesterday.
Okay, stay with me. And, you know, this is very interesting, but India, Geeta, cannot afford to lower its guard. China may not be resorting to either rhetoric or anything else just as yet, but China will not take this lying down, as many experts tell us. Geeta.
Well, that's right. No, but neither side, Gaurav, can really lower its guard, because it is a very important but also very serious issue. This is the first time that the tensions have moved to the tri-junction, the India-Bhutan-China tri-junction. And hence, both countries are treading very carefully. This even as Bhutan has been rather reticent after that one press release on what the ground situation has really been. So while India is saying that they're working and fighting or standing guard for Bhutan, there isn't much word coming in from Bhutan, and hence what India is looking at is diplomatically trying to de-escalate those tensions that could lead to problems during the BRICS summit, which is what China also does not want. And it is not very far from inviting all those leaders of BRICS countries to Xiamen in China for the BRICS summit, which is going to be held in September this year.
Anand Krishnan and Geeta Mohan, keep tracking that story for the moment. Many thanks. There's breaking news that's coming in from Pakistan now.